target audience, the different components of a portfolio, having the right mindset for success, gaining the edge, the portfolio tips you need to be successful, and how to get the call for an interview. So what is a game design or level design portfolio for? It's a body of work that demonstrates your game design or level design knowledge, skills, and experience to hiring managers. And it includes a collection of your games, design documentation, and personal marketing materials, all of which will be created with a specific purpose to help you get the job you want. Therefore, it needs to be designed to impress and strongly motivate hiring managers to contact you for an interview. So now that we have a better understanding of what a portfolio is for, who is the target audience? This is a commonly misunderstood question, so you should assume that any of the following people may be involved in looking at your portfolio at any point during the hiring process. Recruiters, who are mainly interested in looking at your cover letter and resume to make sure you tick all the boxes in terms of meeting the basic requirements for the job before sending it off to the hiring management team. This means that if your cover letter and resume don't line up well with the job's roles and responsibilities and requirements, the recruiter is going to see a disconnect and likely deselect you from the process. This means that it's very important to read through job descriptions carefully, and where you can, echo that information back in your resume and cover letter in an honest and accurate way. Next up are hiring managers, which includes the following people. Producers, who are also mainly interested in evaluating your resume, but will look at your portfolio website to make sure that it's working properly and to make sure that it's looking pretty good before sending it off to the creative team. It's also good to know that another key part of their job is to save the team time, which means if there's anything that they think is a red flag or not quite looking right with your resume, it's not going to make it through to the rest of the team. So you should go in there assuming that producers are going to be senior people on the team with a lot of game experience, and they'll spot problems in your work pretty easily. The creative director is usually the head of design for a game team, and that means they're the number one person you need to impress. It also means that they're usually the one that has the most complete understanding of what the requirements for the role are, and therefore will be the person looking most closely at your work to make sure that you have what they need. And that means that once you've gotten past the recruiting and the producers, they're the ones that are going to be really looking at your demo reel, your games, and your game design documentation and process. And if they really like what they see and think you're a potential candidate, they'll ask the producers from recruiting to bring you in for an interview. And if they don't think you're a potential candidate, and unless the producers or someone else very senior on the team really wants to bring you in, the buck stops with them. This means that the people that are looking at your work are usually very senior, very knowledgeable, very experienced, and they'll be able to see quite quickly whether or not your work is really at the quality level that they need. So it's really important that you try to get to know who these people are, and also try to understand what the requirements are for the job and what you need to show to make sure that your work looks really, really awesome. Because if you don't, you can be sure that somebody else will. It's also important to know that the creative director role may be called different things in different companies. It could be called lead designer, senior designer, or even creative producer. So you'll have to do your homework to figure out who this person is. You also have to be careful because sometimes companies, like EA as an example, may have all three of these people on the same team. So it may take some doing to figure out who this person is. Or, as the case may be, all three may be part of the hiring process in equal measure. Then, like we just said, there are design leads and senior designers. And for the purposes of what we're talking about right now, we're looking at them as being leads or senior specialists of particular areas of the game. And if the junior level designer or game designer position is for a particular area, only those leads or specialists in that area will be involved in their hiring process. And if the creative director doesn't have time to look at your work as a first pass, the leads and senior designers may be asked to do that instead. Either way, they will definitely be involved in looking at your portfolio of work and also interviewing you. And where the creative director will often be looking at your design work from a high level, the leads and senior designers will be looking at it from a more detailed, technical, and specialized point of view. This means that it's a very good thing to be able to show high-level design information as well as more specialized, detailed, and technical information in your portfolio of work. It will also be important to do this during interviews as well, in which case you're going to find that the producers are often asking you more soft skill-oriented types of questions, the creative director asking you high-level design questions, and the leads and senior designers asking you more detailed, specific, and technically oriented questions, and will be looking for you to respond in kind. Before we move on, it's important to know that on really big teams, area leads may have a lot more responsibility, in which case they may be the primary creative person involved, with the creative director having little to sometimes even no involvement at all. So again, it depends on the game team, so you gotta do your homework. Art directors are responsible for all of the areas of art in a game, and they will usually only be on smaller game teams that they'll look at junior game design or level design portfolios. However, that being said, on small or large game teams, if there's any artist that you'll be working with closely as a designer, they'll definitely be involved in the interview. And they'll mostly be looking to see if they think they'd work well with you or not. The technical director is responsible for all of the technology in the game, which means all of the engineers and programmers will report to them. Again, it is usually only on smaller game teams that a technical director will look at junior game design or level design portfolios. However, it's very likely that any programmer that you'd be working with on a day-to-day basis will either look at your portfolio or attend your interview to make sure that they think that you'd be a good fit to work with them. Now that we've gotten to know the different people that are part of the hiring process a little bit better, we're going to outline all of the different components of a game design and level design portfolio. To start, you're going to need portfolio game content, the most important of which being 2 to 3 games or levels that you've designed and built yourself. Then you're going to have to show 1 to 2 well-written game design documents, and they should clearly communicate the design of the entire game. You'll need 2 to 3 examples of game pitch one-pagers that you've written, and 1 to 2 feature briefs that completely describe a particular aspect of your game. It's important to note with these documents that they need to be written so clearly and so completely that if an artist or programmer read them, there would be no room for misinterpretation. And once you've got all of the game content built, you need to create all of the portfolio marketing and network materials. And this includes your portfolio website, where all of your portfolio content and marketing materials will be housed, except for your business card. Then there's your demo reel, which is critical to get right, as it's the #1 way to generate interest in you and your games. Think of it as a short narrative of your 3 games, where you explain to the hiring manager what your games are about and what your design intentions were. And since this is your chance to wow them, you want to call it anything that's particularly interesting, innovative, or really difficult to have pulled off. And if you want to go the extra mile, I highly suggest that you also create a design process video and document. And this is where you would explain step by step how you designed and built your games from the beginning to the end, putting special focus on how you achieved key moments of gameplay from both a technical and iterative standpoint. You'll need a business card, which you'll use at industry events and interviews, and an extremely well-written cover letter and resume, which you will write for each application you make. If you're unfamiliar with what a resume is, it's a short, concise document whose purpose is to explain why you would be well suited to a particular job, and it does this by outlining the specific knowledge, skills, experience, and qualifications that would make you good at it. And lastly, you're going to need great work and character references. And I'm providing a lot of information in later modules to explain how you're going to need to be to get the ones you want. Now that we've got a much better understanding of the components that are going to make up your portfolio, we're going to talk about the kind of mindset you need to have to make a world-class one. And to do this, you always need to be thinking about it from 2 sides, the hiring manager's side and your side. And to get inside of the head of the hiring manager, you need to understand that they're looking for the best possible person to fit their team, project, and role requirements. They're looking for a candidate who's going to help them minimize their project risks while helping them maximize their ability to get successful outcomes. And usually hiring managers are extremely busy and have a very limited time to look at your work, so you need to make sure that you make it easy to find, access, and evaluate. And so I've said it up front, and there's no illusions, when a hiring manager posts a job opportunity, there's going to be only one person that gets it, and that's going to be the person that they believe is the best overall candidate. Now on your side, if you want to get the job you want and make the games you want to make at the companies you want to make them at, you need to prove to the hiring manager that you can do it at an entry level. But here's the hard facts. It doesn't matter how good you think you are. Nobody knows that yet. So you need to build a bulletproof case for why you're the best person for the job, and that needs to show through in your work and through your communication. And the way you're going to do this is by building a portfolio of game content and marketing materials of exceptional quality. And like I mentioned to all of my students, I highly recommend that you get an industry mentor to guide you along the way. And the main reason for this is because you need to make yourself stand out. And that means making sure that your work is head and shoulders above the rest of the applicants. And since you never know who all of the other applicants are actually going to be, you need to make sure that your work is as good as you can possibly make it and leverage your network to make sure that you stand out. So now that we've got the right mindset, I'm going to give you some helpful tips on how to gain the edge over the competition. And I can't tell you enough how important it is to get every little leg up that you can, because competition for entry-level game and level design jobs is fierce. That's why so many people that want to get into design positions get in first through QA. And if you're not sure what QA is, it's the group of people on game teams that do all of the quality assurance. And since the level of specialized entry-level knowledge is lower in QA, it's easier for people that don't have industry experience to get in through that area. So if you want to gain the edge, you need to make sure that you don't try to be all things to all people. Your work must have a clear focus, and it needs to show. To use a metaphor, you don't want your work to be watered-down tang. It never tastes good, and nobody wants it. And what I mean by this is when you try to be all things to all people, you end up being not enough of anything to anybody, and that's never going to be a good thing. The game industry has become incredibly diverse, and there is such an enormous amount of people trying to get jobs at an entry level. You need to specialize in some way if you want to be competitive and get in. So help the hiring manager at the company you want to work at making the games you want to make, evaluate your portfolio, and choose you for an interview by knowing your audience and what they want, so you can deliver content that is relevant to them. And to do this, you need to be clear about your career goal and build your portfolio to support it, making sure to demonstrate interest in their company by showcasing portfolio work that aligns well with their games. You also need to take time to understand what knowledge, skills, and experience to highlight for the job you're targeting so you can effectively demonstrate that in your work. You can also help the hiring manager by showing that you have clear design intentions, rationales, and methodologies behind your work for your 3 portfolio games, demo reel, and design process video and documentation. And when you're doing this, it's important that you're showcasing consistent, high-quality work. Now, if there ends up being any differences in the level of quality of your work, or in how much it's targeted for a particular job, which inevitably there will be to a certain degree, even if it's small, it's important to put your best, most targeted work first to get their hiring manager's attention and make a great first impression. You wouldn't believe how quickly hiring managers often make snap judgments and decisions about an individual based on their first impressions. So I can't stress enough how important it is to get that first impression just right. So you need to present your portfolio content in an interesting, engaging, and compelling way, as well as be organized in a highly accessible, quick, and efficient format. Remember, their hiring manager has limited time, so you need to give them information in bite-sized pieces. A great metaphor for this is to think of the presentation of your portfolio work as being more like a high-quality espresso shot, rather than a tall coffee. It needs to be something awesome that you can down in a second. And the reason for this is because a hiring manager wants to get in, look at your work, find out if they want you, and get out. Remember, you're probably not going to be the only applicant for a job. In fact, there may be many, many applicants for a job. So the more you can make your work quick, easy, and accessible for the hiring manager to find out if they want you or not, the more they're going to like you. It's really the same mentality you would have if you were already a junior level or game designer on a game team, where you would always be trying to help the leads and managers get more work done, better, and faster. And to do that, you need to communicate in a clear, concise, and direct fashion, ideally in an active voice, formatting all of your written communication in an easy-to-read and easy-to-understand way. And lastly, by making sure that you're using correct spelling, correct grammar, and sentence structure. These last 3 points are extremely important when it comes to building a successful portfolio, and you wouldn't believe how often they're actually overlooked. There's nothing sadder when you're looking at a portfolio of work, and it starts out strong, and then you start seeing problems like this come up. And the worst part about it is that they're actually the easiest things to get right. And since having great written communication and detail-orientedness is such an important part of the job for a junior game or level designer, these kinds of things really can't be overlooked. Because if you do, you're just going to be selected out. So please don't do that. Take the time to do things right by editing your work and having multiple people edit your work, and you'll see that high attention to detail and quality really pays off. Now that we've talked about some great ways that you can gain the edge with your portfolio, we're going to talk about how to bring it home and get the call for an interview. To do this, your portfolio must showcase such outstanding quality that a hiring manager can clearly see the value you can bring to their team and then calls you in for an interview. Everything else that follows in this course is a step-by-step process for achieving just that. And before we move on, I want to take a second to note that even though we've painted the hiring manager in the light as someone that has very little time and that you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get their attention, that they truly do enjoy finding someone that does great work and is a great fit. It's also worth mentioning that as hiring managers, we do get excited when we believe we found the right person. And that's because discovering new talent and making awesome hires are some of the most rewarding things that we get to do in our jobs. And you can help them do that by creating an extraordinary entry-level game designer or level designer portfolio now. And at the end of the day, that's truly the only portfolio that's worth making if you're serious about breaking in. And that wraps up everything for the portfolio overview module. Before we move on, we're going to do a quick recap of what we just learned. What a game design and level design portfolio is for, who the target audience for your portfolio is, what the different components of a game design and level design portfolio are, what the right mindset for success is, how to gain the edge with your portfolio, and how to get that call for an interview.